Welcome everybody to another episode of Church of Aliens. I hope you're all doing well. I recently saw Jeremy Corbell's interview with Joe Rogan. I'm sure most of you have seen it. I think it's a great interview. It's around 3 hours just by himself. Jeremy has been on there before, but with Bob Lazar a few years ago and with George Knapp. The Bob Lazar one was really great, but he hardly really said anything. He was just there more of a support for Bob Lazar. So it was great just to see just him on his own getting to know Jeremy a bit more and the reasons why he got involved in UFOs and the paranormal. And I just found the interview really interesting. I would have liked for him to explore a bit more about his life and exactly why he got involved in this, because to me it doesn't really seem very clear at all, like why exactly people in the government are sharing this with him. He sort of mentioned it a little bit that some of the people in the government just trust him because he's been recommended by other people, but it doesn't really tell the full story. Why would they send him? There's a lot of other guys who do documentaries or have channels or websites. So why is he really like their lightning rod for all these sort of videos and leaks and drops? He doesn't really tell the full story there, but I would like if he could, in another interview, sort of reveal more of why that is exactly. But regardless, I thought the interview was really fun. Most of the 3 hours was just about UFOs and what's happening right now, in the past, and even the videos that he has released himself. They did go into a little bit of the discussion about psychedelics and what they've all experienced, and even went into discuss Jeremy's own UFO experience. So that was really cool to hear. Apparently, he saw quite an amazing UFO orb glowing and moving in several directions. He was saying that it looked like it was sliding across the sky, but he didn't film it on his phone, and he kind of just said that he just wanted to live in the moment and just didn't really pull out the phone, because he normally does with anything like that. He usually would try and film it himself. Being a documentary filmmaker, it would make sense, but in this case, I can't remember exactly the name of who the person was that saw it with him. I had it on the tip of my tongue, the guy. He shared also the person who he had the experience with also drew the picture of what the craft looked like, which was an interesting description, like a hamburger with a bite taken out of it. But I've seen those type of drawings before, when on Google Images you see a table of different UFOs, and that one I've seen before. It rings a bell in my mind. So that was really interesting. What was really cool as well was how he went into the reasons why some of these UFOs are appearing more and more, and especially in war zones, and why they're being shot at by the armies involved. And there were, if I remember correctly, he was describing how they're being fired upon because they identify a payload. So that's really interesting. And why sometimes they're not fired upon, because it's not a perceived threat. They don't sense a payload. And especially he was talking about they are popping up a lot more in the Middle East during conflicts, and it's apparently being shot at by the U.S. government and the U.S. Army, sorry, and Syrian armies and rebels anywhere. So that's really interesting because I've heard that even Jacques Vallée in his book Dimensions mentions that there is a lot of cases where armies have been trying to shoot it down or even just try and damage it in any way. So this kind of corroborates those type of stories that I've heard before. Another interesting part of his interview was when he was mentioning the different aspects of the UFOs, and he said the most popular right now is the cube within a sphere, and I've heard that before by Ryan Graves. I think that he mentioned this when it was close by, and it was like an amazing description. It just boggles the mind to see that outside your window because it just seems so yeah, it's like a fish out of water. It just seems so peculiar to see that flying around or just moving through space next to you. So he didn't really give any, maybe he doesn't know, but any real reasons why those sightings are so popular right now. I thought it would be more of a flying saucer or a tic tac, but the cube within a sphere seems to be like the most common one right now since I think he mentioned 2021. So the other one that he mentioned that was really interesting that caught my attention was the jellyfish sort of look to the UFO, which was kind of like a dome, and then these sort of I don't know, either legs or dangling four pieces of it. And apparently, he said that those types of UFOs have been shot at by the U.S. Army or Navy. Um, that that exact description I've never heard before of a jellyfish type of UFO. So I'll have to research that and see if I can find any other witness or any other type of author or researcher mentioning this type of UFO, because that was quite a crazy description of a jellyfish type UFO. Um, and then the interview got pretty interesting when they were talking about psychedelics and how he had some psychedelic experiences, but not. It didn't seem like they were really much to do with exactly the UFO. But he was talking about how he he took mushrooms and it really helped with his sleep apnea that he had for years. And apparently, he had this sort of encounter, a vision with a Cheshire cat, and they were arguing with each other, saying, "I'm an ancient and powerful being," and Jeremy was saying, "No, I am." And they had this argument, and apparently through that, I don't know how, but after these things, he seemed to have healed his sleep apnea. And then Joe Rogan did mention, which I've heard before, of how he hasn't seen a typical UFO alien being while on DMT or ayahuasca or mushroom, but he has seen these Joker type beings that flipped him off and were just sort of laughing or smirking at him. And what he got from that was not to take life so seriously or himself. And I just find it interesting that human beings just can have this experience, and from this absurd experience that you don't even know if it's really real or not. You can't even tell what's happening, if it's just your imagination or the drugs, or what is real, that you would create this meaning that will then benefit your life. And I was thinking of how in religious context as well, how people can just be reading the Bible uh, or another book or attend a meeting, a church meeting, and come away with meanings that maybe even the book itself didn't really have, or the preacher didn't really intend to have, and just create a meaning for their life that benefits them. I guess it could also work the other way, that they create a meaning that really paralyzes or hurts the person. But I just find the human mind really fascinating in that way. How, in a sense, we're just built like to have meaning. We create meaning all the time. And I'm just finding it really interesting how with the UFO, it's something very similar. They're not really sitting down when somebody is being abducted, when you hear these stories, they're not sitting down discussing theology or science or this, open to your questions about the universe or why we are here or who are they. You're really just giving, in a sense, an occult experience, like a hidden experience, and there's a meaning that you have to discover, and it might take years for you to discover this meaning that will help you in your life in some way. And I've been reading this book by Jack Vallée recently. I'm almost finished. Dimensions. It kind of goes into this idea a lot. And one thing that I wish in the Jeremy Corbell and Joe Rogan interview they went into a bit more, because the discussion seems to be more of what are these objects, and can the government disclose more information, and do they have bodies, and it's just about that really, like their outside perception of witnessing something and what's the data on something. But really, when you research a little bit of what this is having an effect on human beings and their belief systems, it's just another story, another thing, another completely different conversation to have of how it's affecting people and religion. And there's patterns to that. There's patterns to having someone having a close contact with these beings or craft and really affecting their brain, affecting their beliefs and changing their lives. Sometimes even for really bad reasons, sometimes really good reasons. I mean, good effects, like they can be healed. Others can, have adverse effects to their body. But that conversation isn't really being had right now. It's just been, look at these objects. What are they? Aren't they crazy? And what does the government know? But after that conversation's really been had, it's really what's happening to the experiencer. And I would love to hear more on that by Jeremy, because I'm sure he knows a lot more information about that. So I hope to hear that soon from him in another interview or next time he goes on Jerry. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.